You can train a dog to sit, stay, sniff out drugs, even tackle armed suspects. But what you can't train is grief. And Echo, the retired DEA canine who'd once dragged cartel members out of shipping containers, was grieving. He hadn't seen his partner, Special Agent Elena Rivera, in over 8 years. But every morning at 8 o'clock a.m. sharp, Echo sat in front of the garage door and stared. He didn't bark, didn't whine, just waited. As if one morning she'd finally walk through that door, DEA badge clipped to her belt, calling for him like she always used to. Marcus Rivera, Elena's younger brother, had seen it too many times to pretend it was random. He'd raised Echo since the day the agency retired him, after Elena disappeared during a surveillance mission near the Canadian border. No body, no answers, just silence and a truckload of guilt that Marcus wore like a second skin. But on this particular morning, something changed. Echo didn't just sit. He pawed at the door, scratched hard, demanded to go. His ears were rigid, tail stiff, hackles up. Something was coming. And when Marcus's phone rang at exactly 8:01 a.m., Echo let out a low, throaty growl before it even buzzed. Marcus reached for the phone, knocking over a half-empty water glass. The name on the caller ID hit like a hammer. Director Patricia Thornton, DEA International Operations. She never called this early. Not unless something big had happened. "Rivera," Marcus answered, voice rough from a sleepless night. "Marcus," came Thornton's voice, grave and direct. "You might want to sit down." "I'm standing, tell me. We've had a development, Elena's case." Marcus didn't respond. His grip on the phone turned his knuckles white. A mining crew in Cascade County was surveying a cave system near the Canadian border. They found a white Ford F-150 through a skylight shaft. VIN matches Elena's missing DEA vehicle. Marcus sat down hard on the edge of the bed. Echo paced. "How long has it been down there?" Marcus asked, but he already knew the answer. 8 years. "That's the strange part," Thornton said. "Minimal rust, minimal damage. Forensics believe it's only been there a few months, maybe 6. We're sending a team now. Local law enforcement's already on site, but I wanted you to hear it from me first." Echo jumped onto his feet, tail straight out, ears trained toward Marcus as if waiting for confirmation. Marcus grabbed his jacket, badge, and keys. "I'm heading there." "Marcus, I know. I'll stay professional." But he was lying. Nothing about his sister's disappearance had ever felt professional. It was personal from day one. The drive north took him through winding mountain roads, where pine needles blanketed the curves and sunlight filtered through the evergreens like faded memories. Echo sat in the passenger seat, occasionally sticking his nose toward the cracked window, sniffing the high-altitude air with an intensity Marcus hadn't seen in years. 8 years ago, Marcus had driven these same roads after every failed lead, every bogus tip, every crackpot who claimed to have seen a female agent hiking the border trails. Nothing ever panned out. Elena and her partner, Agent Sarah Collins, had vanished during what should have been a routine surveillance op. But if the truck was real, if it had only been placed there recently, then someone had been covering up their disappearance this whole time. They reached the scene by noon. DEA vehicles and forensics tents lined a makeshift command center near the cave entrance. Orange cones blocked off the trail. A few news vans loitered down the road, vultures waiting for scraps. Echo leapt from the car the moment Marcus opened the door, nose to the ground, tail twitching. He pulled hard toward the cave, past the crime tape, past the agents whispering in clusters. "Whoa," said a young officer, reaching out to stop him. "He's DEA," Marcus said flatly, showing his badge. "Let him work." Echo barked once, deep and guttural, before lowering his head and slipping into the trees flanking the cave. Dr. Sarah Lindstrom, the forensic team lead, met Marcus with a nod. "Agent Rivera," she said, her voice professional but soft. "We've confirmed one of the bodies as Agent Collins through dental records. The other 2 are still unidentified. No sign of your sister." Marcus swallowed hard. "She wasn't in the truck?" "No, but the vehicle is in surprisingly good condition, too clean for 8 years of exposure." She led him to the cave entrance, where powerful lights illuminated the drop-off. The white F-150 rested on a rock shelf just above the waterline, the DEA logo on the door still faintly visible. Echo returned, wet and muddy, his snout dripping with cave water. He barked twice and circled Marcus, anxious, almost frantic, then bolted toward the rock shelf and started pawing furiously at the ground just outside the search area. "Echo, no!" Marcus called, but the dog didn't stop. They followed, and that's when the search team saw it. Buried beneath moss and gravel, a shredded strip of government-issued tactical pants. Elena's uniform fabric. The scene froze. Even in retirement, Echo had found something the professionals missed. If stories like this move you, where animals bring truth to light, be sure to subscribe to our channel, Heroes for Animals, and never miss a story that truly matters. Dr. Lindstom's eyes narrowed. We would have missed that completely. He never forgot her scent, Marcus said. They bagged the cloth as evidence and pulled Echo away gently. He whined the whole time, paws twitching as if still wanting to dig. Thornton called back that evening with more troubling news. "Marcus, I need you to be careful," she said. "Why? What else?" "Local law enforcement has been unusually inquisitive. Cascade County's sheriff, Wade Thompson, just called my office. He claims he has a confidential informant with information about Elena, but he refuses to go through official channels. Says he'll only talk to family." Marcus looked down at Echo, who was curled by the motel door, ears perked. "Thompson came by earlier," Marcus said. Echo didn't like him. Thornton was silent for a beat. "Trust your dog." Marcus hung up and turned off the light. He laid down next to his service weapon, case files, and a dog who refused to stop waiting at 8 o'clock a.m. The past was knocking again. And Echo, always the first to sense danger, wasn't done yet. The motel room was cold. Not from the thermostat, which Marcus had turned off hours ago, but from the weight in the air. The kind of chill that comes when something terrible brushes too close to the surface. Echo sat motionless by the window, his ears pointed, eyes locked on the sheriff's patrol car outside. It had been parked there for over 20 minutes, engine off, no lights. Marcus leaned against the desk, flipping through photos of the cave site and the shredded strip of DEA-issued pants Echo had uncovered earlier. He still couldn't explain how the dog had found it, buried under gravel and moss, in a place that had supposedly been untouched for years. But Echo had locked in like it was fresh. Outside, the car door finally creaked open. Sheriff Wade Thompson stepped out, smoothing his uniform and wiping something, sweat, from his forehead. From his... Echo's low growl started the second Thompson's boots hit the gravel. There was no barking, no movement, just that quiet, guttural warning. Marcus opened the door before the sheriff had a chance to knock. "Agent Rivera," Thompson said, adjusting his campaign hat. "Apologies for the unannounced visit. Can I come in? I have something sensitive to share. It's about your sister." Echo stood between them now, body tense, nose twitching. Marcus gestured inside. "He won't bite," he lied. Thompson hesitated before stepping in, eyes scanning the room too quickly. First the open case files, then the bed, then Marcus's service weapon on the nightstand. "Long night?" Thompson asked. "You could say that." The sheriff sat slowly in the motel chair, removing his hat. "I won't waste your time. There's a man, someone local. He claims to have information about Elena. He won't talk to the DEA, says he'll only speak to a family member, someone who won't bury the truth." "And you just happened to find him today?" Marcus asked, skeptical. Thompson exhaled through his nose. "Let's just say the cave discovery's stirring up ghosts. People who've kept quiet for years are starting to whisper." Behind him, Echo paced the room. Not frantically, but with tight, deliberate steps, circling behind Thompson, tail rigid, watching. "Where's the meat?" Marcus asked, his tone flat. "Old Bracken Ridge Mill, 5 o'clock. He's skittish. If he senses anything official, he'll disappear." Marcus nodded slowly. "I'll think about it." Thompson rose, adjusting his belt. "Time sensitive. You'll want to act fast." As he turned to go, Echo growled again, this time louder. Thompson paused, looking down at the dog. "You got yourself a loyal one." Marcus shut the door behind him. 30 minutes later, Echo was back at the window. This time, Marcus watched too. Thompson hadn't left. He was still in the patrol car, talking into his phone, his movements sharper, more aggressive than before. When he finally drove off, he didn't head toward the county line. He went back toward the mountain road, toward the cave. Marcus sat down heavily on the bed. Echo placed his head on Marcus's knee and looked up. "You smell something, don't you?" Echo let out a soft huff. The data wasn't matching up. Thompson had inserted himself into the case far too quickly, and too confidently. Marcus opened his laptop and began cross-referencing files from the original investigation 8 years ago. Fuel logs, cell tower pings, search maps. Echo lay beside him, tail thumping once each time Marcus muttered a curse under his breath. Then it hit. The original search grid, designed by Thompson, deliberately excluded the area where the truck was just found. And the justification for each exclusion? Contradicted by satellite images and old forestry maps. One spot labeled impassable clearly showed ATV tire tracks. Echo stood up, ears forward. "You feel that?" Marcus said, rising. "It's not just me, right?" Echo let out a sharp bark. They weren't just reopening a cold case. They were walking into something that had never been closed properly in the first place. 2 hours later, Marcus pulled into the county archives office. The sun was high, but Echo was restless in the back seat, whining, turning in circles. "Hang on," Marcus said, checking his phone. "Just need 10 minutes. But Echo barked again, short, loud, and insistent, the kind of bark that used to mean target acquired. Marcus turned toward the window and froze. Thompson's patrol car, parked near the back lot. Something wasn't right. Marcus grabbed Echo's leash and unrolled his credentials at the front desk. "Agent Rivera, I need access to supplemental reports from the 2017 Cascade search file." The clerk blinked. "That's locked. You'll need written clearance." Marcus tapped the badge again. "Now!" Within minutes, he was scrolling through buried records. One in particular made his heart race. A wildlife officer's report from 2 days after Elena's disappearance. He had noted fresh vehicle tracks in the same area Thompson had called impassable. The report had never been logged into the primary case folder. It had been sidelined. Echo pressed his nose against the filing cabinet, whined once, then scratched at the bottom drawer. Marcus looked. Inside, a folder labeled Map Discrepancies, Cascade Region. Dusty, unreviewed. Echo had found it. Inside were hand-drawn topographical overlays contradicting the official search grids.
"Elena," Marcus whispered, "you must have known this was wrong."
He copied the files, snapped photos of the maps, and left the office without looking back. Echo trotted at his side, tail high. That night, back at the motel, Echo wouldn't stop staring at Marcus's duffel bag. "Don't tell me you want to go," Marcus said. Echo whined, then sat by the bag and stared. Marcus opened it and reached inside. The GPS collar. The same one they'd used when Elena and Echo worked together on high-risk raids. He hadn't touched it in years. Echo leaned forward and nudged the device. "I shouldn't bring you," Marcus muttered. "But I've got a bad feeling, and I don't trust anyone else." He powered it on, clipped it to Echo's harness, and whispered, "Okay, partner, one more ride." At 4:47 p.m., they reached the access road leading to Bracken Ridge Mill. It was worse than Marcus remembered. Rusty gates, tall grass, security cameras that definitely hadn't been there 8 years ago. He parked a half-mile out and slipped into the woods with Echo at his side. No leash, just hand signals. Echo moved like a shadow, his old instincts kicking in with every step, his body low, nose twitching, stopping every few seconds to reassess. They reached a ridge overlooking the mill. Marcus pulled out binoculars. Down below, Sheriff Thompson. Alongside him, 3 men Marcus recognized from DEA watch lists. One of them handed Thompson a thick manila envelope. The sheriff opened it and smiled. Echo growled, quiet but unmistakable. Marcus clicked a few photos. The money, the handshakes, the nods. They were planning something, and Echo had sniffed it out first. The wind shifted. Marcus caught fragments of conversation. "Tonight, Northern Warehouse. Move everything." Then another voice. "Rivera's asking question. He's a problem." Echo stiffened. His ears twitched. He lowered to the ground, every muscle coiled. Marcus stared down at his partner. This dog who never gave up on Elena. This dog who knew her scent better than anyone. "Yeah," Marcus whispered, watching the sheriff shake hands with smugglers. "We're all in now." Echo didn't sleep that night. He paced the motel room floor until the carpet was matted under his paws. Every time Marcus shifted or checked his phone, Echo looked up, expecting something, anticipating a signal. Something in the forest had unsettled him deeply. The old mill, the men, the smell, and that voice. He had heard the name, Rivera, spoken by the same man who had once given him commands in a different lifetime. And for Echo, that name meant one thing: family. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, staring at a flash drive. On it were photos from the ridge, Sheriff Thompson taking money from known traffickers, the exchange happening less than an hour before the supposed informant meeting. The meeting had clearly been a setup. and Marcus knew he wouldn't have walked away from it. But Echo. Echo had led him through the woods instead of into the trap.
You saved my life, Marcus whispered, scratching behind Echo's ear.
The German shepherd closed his eyes briefly, then stood and nudged Marcus's laptop bag. You want to work? At this hour? Marcus chuckled, even as a chill settled over him. But Echo was serious. He nudged again, harder this time, until Marcus gave in. Marcus drove them to the Seattle DEA field office just after midnight. The building was silent, guarded by a lone security agent who waved him in with a tired nod. Echo stayed close, his padded paws making no sound against the linoleum floors. They headed straight for the archive room. The cold hum of the preservation systems filled the air, along with the faint chemical tang of old files and dry ink. Marcus pulled up the case files from the original investigation, the ones he himself had written 8 years ago. He had been a rookie back then, barely cleared for fieldwork, and forced to write the report that listed his own sister as missing, presumed dead. Now, with a decade of experience behind him, he read it with new eyes. Then he opened Sheriff Thompson's statements, and everything snapped into focus. Thompson had filed his first search recommendations before dawn the morning after Elena disappeared, and his map, marked with red X's, had steered search teams away from the exact location where Elena's truck was just found. Marcus scanned it line by line. Too steep for vehicles. Flood risk unsafe for teams. Private land with heavy security presence. He cross-referenced with old satellite maps. Each excuse fell apart. The terrain wasn't too steep. The area was dry that week. The private land had been abandoned for years. Echo, now lying beside Marcus's chair, let out a short bark. Marcus looked down. Echo was staring at the bottom drawer of a metal filing cabinet in the back corner of the room. It was unmarked, slightly ajar. Marcus opened it. Inside, a crumpled wildlife report from a state game warden, James Carver, dated just 2 days after Elena vanished. The report documented fresh tire tracks and disturbed brush in one of the zones Thompson had marked as impassable. Why hadn't this been included in the main file? Marcus scanned for a signature. Carver had filed the report, but it had been buried as non-critical by Thompson himself. Echo stood and stared at Marcus as if to say, keep going. Marcus typed quickly, pulling Sheriff Thompson's patrol logs from the week of Elena's disappearance. The sheriff's car had reportedly only patrolled a 20-mile radius that night. But then Marcus accessed the motor pool fuel records. The gas consumption tripled the claimed mileage. Thompson had driven at least 60 miles through the backcountry, miles he never reported. Miles that pointed in one direction, the same region where Elena's truck had now been found. Echo stood again, tail stiff. Marcus looked at his partner. We've been looking in the wrong place. By sunrise, Marcus had built a digital dossier. Thompson's contradictory fuel records, the buried wildlife report, satellite imagery showing accessible trails, photos of the bribe exchange at Bracken Ridge, and something else, a pattern of disappearances. Marcus ran every missing persons report from Cascade County over the last decade. The list came back with 17 names. Most were women. Most had last been seen near Thompson's jurisdiction. Most had been dismissed as voluntary disappearances. Echo whined as Marcus scrolled through photo after photo. Young faces, lost without answers. And then Echo stopped and barked. Loud. Marcus jumped. What is it? He asked, staring at the screen. Echo's nose was pressed to the screen, on the image of a woman named Maria Gonzalez, last seen in 2017. Next to her, a daughter. Anna, age 9. Marcus's throat tightened. He recognized the name. It had been mentioned during the overheard conversation at the mill. 2 of the unidentified bodies found in the cave. It wasn't just Sarah Collins in that cave with Elena's truck. It was Maria and Anna. Echo had just confirmed it. Marcus stood in the center of the archive room, breathing hard. Thompson had been playing both sides. He'd been running a smuggling operation out of Cascade County, eliminating anyone who got too close, including his sister. And all this time, the dog lying at Marcus's feet had been the one holding on. Echo had never stopped searching. He had waited 8 years by the garage door every morning at 8 a.m. because he knew Elena wasn't just gone. She was out there somewhere waiting to be found. The next morning, Marcus took Echo back to the forest. He parked 3 miles from the Bracken Ridge site and hiked the rest of the way in silence. Echo's movements grew sharper with each step. His nose dipped low, his ears tracked every shift in the wind. They reached a clearing, an old game trail that hadn't been used in years. There was no path, Just moss, mud, silence. Then Echo stopped and let out a whine. He turned in slow circles, nose low, then barked. Once, loud. Marcus stepped forward, heart hammering. Beneath the moss, just inches from Echo's paws, was a piece of fabric, military grade, torn, faded, stained with something dark. Marcus crouched, brushing back the leaves. It was a corner of a DEA-issued tactical vest. Elena's. Echo barked again, louder, circling the spot. They'd just found a burial site. Marcus radioed in coordinates. "Chen," he said, "tell Thornton we need a forensics team. We've got something. Echo found it." 2 hours later, Echo sat beside Marcus at the edge of the clearing. Tail curled, body still. The forensics team had arrived. Cameras clicked. Ground-penetrating radar pinged. Dr. Lindstrom knelt beside the shallow grave. Tactical vest, initials ER still visible? Marcus nodded, too hollow to speak, and then Echo stood, walked over, and lay down beside the disturbed earth. Silent, steady, watching over her, just like he always had. The wind shifted. Not much. Just enough to carry something cold and metallic across the clearing, like the scent of a sealed room cracking open. Echo's nose lifted immediately, his ears locked forward, a soft growl rumbled in his chest. Marcus didn't need to ask. He knew that sound. It meant someone or something was nearby. The forensics team had just finished tagging the burial site Echo uncovered hours earlier. A corner of a torn tactical vest, soil showing signs of old disturbance, Elena's initials, but no remains, at least not yet. Dr. Lindstrom had confirmed the preliminary results. "There's something else buried deeper," she said. "We'll need a full crew and GPR gear to excavate properly. This could be Elena's final resting place." Marcus wanted to believe it. Part of him needed to believe it. But Echo wasn't ready to sit still. He circled the site, tail rigid, nose low, growl rising to a steady hum. "Echo, easy," Marcus said, crouching beside him. But the dog didn't relax. He was staring into the trees, northeast, toward the old logging road that led past the Bracken Ridge Mill. And then he moved, fast, head down, paws light, slipping into the underbrush like a shadow. "Echo!" Marcus took off after him, heart hammering. He didn't bother with the trail. He followed the flashes of movement, the rustle of ferns, the faint paw prints in the pine needles. He caught up after 3 minutes. Echo stood frozen at the edge of a secondary clearing. Below them, about 50 yards away, Sheriff Thompson was pacing near his patrol SUV, talking into a burner phone. His words echoed faintly through the trees. "If he keeps digging, we've got a problem. No, he's not DEA right now, just a brother. But he's got the dog. The damn dog won't stop sniffing around." Marcus dropped to a knee, heart pounding. Echo crouched beside him, silent now, eyes sharp. "He's talking about you, buddy," Marcus whispered. "They know you're on to them." Thompson paced again, wiping sweat from his brow. His body language had changed. No more smug calm like at the motel. Now he looked like a man who knew the dam was cracking. "We burn the northern warehouse tonight," Thompson said. "The DEA's gonna hit the mill. We can't leave anything behind." There it was, the trigger. Marcus had suspected the mill was only one piece of the operation. Now he had confirmation there was more, and it was going up in flames tonight. Echo growled softly. Marcus reached for his phone. "Chen, it's me. Get a team to Forest Road 47 near the old Bracken Ridge Trail. Thompson just gave us everything." The plan moved fast. By 3:00 p.m., Marcus was back at the field office. DEA tactical units were being briefed. Search warrants were being drawn up. The evidence Echo had uncovered, photos, fuel logs, buried maps, was enough to justify a full-scale operation. Still, time was against them. Thompson and his crew had hours to clear out the warehouse and destroy everything. Echo paced between briefing tables, tail flicking, eyes locked on Marcus. He could sense the tension in the room, the urgency, the heat building beneath the surface. When Marcus slipped out the back door, Echo followed without hesitation. "Come on, boy," Marcus whispered. "We're going in first." They took a nondescript gray Honda from the agency's motor pool. No lights, no markings. Civilian plates. Marcus drove northeast, Echo in the passenger seat, ears alert the entire way. No one else knew the back roads like Marcus did. And Echo? Echo didn't need maps. He remembered. 8 years ago, this forest had swallowed his partner whole. Now it was time to take something back. They reached the edge of the northern warehouse site around 4:20 p.m. It didn't look like much, Just an old lumber distribution center, long since shut down after the environmental crackdowns in the 90s. But the signs of life were obvious now. Fresh tire tracks, surveillance cameras, movement near the entrance. Echo growled again. Marcus cut the engine and slipped out, crouching low as they made their way through a line of overgrown shrubs. They found a vantage point near an old utility pole overlooking the lot. 2 pickup trucks, 1 black van, a shipping container being loaded, and people, 6 men moving fast, armed, and women, girls, being herded toward the vans.
No, Marcus whispered. No, no, no.
Echo whimpered beside him, body tensed. This wasn't just about evidence anymore. This was trafficking, active, live, and it was about to vanish into the wind if they didn't act. Marcus reached for his phone.
Chen, it's worse than we thought. They're moving people right now. Victims. At least 20, maybe more. We don't have an hour.
ETA is 35 minutes, Chen replied. Do not engage, I repeat. But Echo was already moving. He lunged forward, head low, circling wide around the clearing, disappearing into the trees near the south fence. Echo, Marcus hissed. But the dog didn't stop. He wasn't running blindly. He was flanking, just like he'd been trained. Marcus swore under his breath, pulled his Glock from his holster, and followed. The southern perimeter was quieter. 1 guard, half alert, smoking a cigarette and scrolling his phone. He never heard Echo coming. The German Shepherd tackled him clean off his feet, jaws snapping once near the wrist, enough to disarm, not maim. The man screamed. Marcus was on him 2 seconds later, zip-tying his hands and yanking the radio from his belt. Then they were in, through the back door. Dark corridors led toward the warehouse's core. Echo stopped suddenly, ears pinned, nose twitching. He pressed against a metal door, rusted but still functional. Marcus opened it slowly. What he saw made him sick. Cages. Dozens of them. Makeshift cells welded from old chain-link fencing. Women and girls pressed against the wire, wide-eyed and bruised. Some were wrapped in blankets. Others were barely clothed. All of them flinched at the sudden light. Echo stepped inside. And something changed. The fear didn't leave, but it paused, just long enough for one girl, maybe 12 years old, to whisper, "Pero bueno." Echo licked her hand through the cage. Then he turned toward Marcus, eyes burning. Ready. The firefight started seconds later. One of the smugglers had found the Southern Guard unconscious. The alarm was raised. Marcus barely had time to secure the cage doors before bullets ripped through the far wall. Echo stayed low, moving from crate to crate with military precision, barking in bursts to signal movement. Marcus fired back from cover, picking off a man near the catwalk above. The main door exploded open moments later. DEA Tactical had arrived. The warehouse filled with shouted commands, smoke, gunfire, and screams. But Echo, he didn't flinch. He stood guard over the cages, placing his body between the girls and the line of fire, even when a bullet struck the ground 2 inches from his paw. Even when one trafficker broke toward the cages with a weapon raised, Echo lunged, bringing the man down with a snarl that echoed across the walls. Marcus ran to his side, heart in his throat. "You okay?" he whispered, patting Echo's ribs. Echo wagged his tail once and barked. 32 victims were rescued that night. 3 traffickers were killed in the firefight. 4 were taken into custody. Sheriff Thompson had vanished before the raid, but his phone had pinged near the site just 10 minutes earlier. He knew it was over. And now Marcus knew where he'd go next. Back to the forest. Back to where the secrets were buried. And Echo? He wasn't done digging. The warehouse still smelled like terror. Even after the gunfire faded, after the women and girls were wrapped in thermal blankets and loaded into ambulances, even after the medics came and the agents began logging evidence, that smell stayed. Sweat. Blood. Pharmaceuticals. Old wood soaked with decades of grime and now fresh with something darker. The desperate stench of survival. Marcus leaned against the tailgate of a black DEA Suburban, his left hand gripping Echo's harness tightly. Not because Echo was pulling, but because Marcus needed to feel him. The dog had taken down 2 men during the firefight, and just like always, he hadn't hesitated.
"You're a damn hero," Marcus whispered.
Echo panted softly, watching the last victims being led out of the cages. Some walked. Some had to be carried. Others couldn't stop staring at Echo like he'd come out of a dream. One girl, a teenager no older than 14, broke from a medic's grasp and knelt down beside Echo. She placed her hand on his muzzle and whispered something in a language Marcus didn't recognize. Echo licked her fingers once. Then the girl let go and returned to the line.
Marcus watched in silence, jaw tight. Then a voice crackled from the radio. "Rivera, you're gonna want to hear this." Inside the mobile command trailer, Agent Chen was reviewing footage and statements. On screen, Sheriff Wade Thompson sat handcuffed in a metal chair, blood seeping through a gauze wrap on his leg. He'd been picked up half a mile down the service road, trying to torch a stash of documents. "He broke the second he saw Echo," Chen said. "Didn't even ask for a lawyer." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What did he say?" "He told us about her," Chen replied quietly. "Elena?" Chen nodded and tapped a file on the screen. "He says she was held at a secondary site, an old shipping container deep in the Cascade backcountry. They kept her there for 2 months, tried to break her, tried to make her give up what she knew about ongoing DEA surveillance." Marcus didn't breathe. "Did she?" "No," Chen said. "Not a damn word. She gave them false badge numbers, outdated radio channels, kept stringing them along, gave them just enough to stay alive." A silence passed between them. "She died like a soldier," Chen finished, "fighting." Marcus turned away. Echo stood behind him, ears low, eyes soft. "She left a message," Chen said. Marcus turned back around. "Before they executed her, she buried something. Thompson said it was a bundle. Photos, notes, maybe even coordinates. Said he meant to go back for it, but never found the time. He's been trying to dig it up ever since he heard we were reopening the case." Marcus clenched his jaw. "Where?" Chen slid a GPS tag across the table. "Here, 5 miles past the ridge you and Echo hiked yesterday." Marcus picked it up, studied the numbers, and nodded once. "I'm going." By late afternoon, Marcus was back on the trail. Only this time, he wasn't alone. 4 agents from the tactical unit flanked him in formation, silent, alert, eyes scanning every tree line. And Echo led the way. The sun hung low, casting long amber shadows across the forest floor. Pines creaked in the breeze, birds scattered overhead. But Echo didn't pause. He moved with purpose, nose to the earth, tail slicing through air like a metronome. After an hour, they reached it. A disturbed patch of soil beneath a fallen log. Moss peeled back, a glint of plastic beneath pine needles. Echo barked once, sharp and final. Marcus dropped to his knees and dug. The bundle was wrapped in clear construction plastic. Inside, photographs of the warehouse, invoices, a logbook filled with smuggled names and movement dates. And one more thing, a blood-stained strip of cloth torn from a tactical vest with handwriting still legible. Special Agent Elena Rivera, DEA, taken alive October 15, Sarah Collins murdered at scene, Sheriff Wade Thompson involved, trafficking operation, warehouse 3 miles north of Bracken Ridge. They're moving people. Tell Marcus I fought. Tell him I never gave them anything real. Tell him I'm sorry." Marcus sat back, clutching the cloth. Echo lay beside him, eyes watching the forest, body still as a stone. "She left it for us," Marcus said hoarsely. "She made sure someone would find it." One of the agents knelt beside them, radioing to Chen. "We've got it. Confirmed physical evidence tied to the original case." Marcus stood slowly. "Now we find her body." They worked through the night. Ground-penetrating radar. Canine cadaver units. Portable floodlights that painted the woods in artificial daylight. And at 2:17 a.m., the final silence broke. "Agent Rivera," one of the techs called out, lifting a tarp. Beneath layers of earth and stone, under precisely the coordinates Echo had pulled Marcus toward for days, lay the remains of a woman. The bones were intact, the uniform still recognizable. One gunshot wound to the back of the skull, instantaneous. Marcus knelt beside her. Dr. Lindstrom confirmed the forensic ID. "Your sister never stopped fighting," she said gently. Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Echo stood over the grave and let out a long, low howl that echoed through the trees and made every man and woman on the team go quiet. They brought Elena home at sunrise. 32 survivors from the warehouse had been processed and taken into care. Sheriff Thompson's confession had given the DEA names, safe houses, routes, and burial sites. 4 more bodies were recovered in the weeks that followed. Women who had vanished without a trace. Families who never stopped asking questions finally had someone to bury. But none of it would have happened without the dog, without Echo. At the formal press conference 2 days later, Marcus stood beside the director of DEA Western Division, dressed in his full agent uniform. The podium was surrounded by cameras and reporters. Echo sat at his side, clean, polished, vest zipped tight. His ears perked at the sound of Elena's name. Marcus adjusted the mic. She died protecting this country. She died doing her job. And the only reason you're hearing the truth now is because of a dog who never stopped believing she was still out there. He looked down. Echo didn't need evidence. He didn't need GPS. He remembered her scent. And he never gave up. Neither should we. The applause was thunderous, but Echo didn't flinch. He just sat, still and proud, eyes on the horizon, because he wasn't done yet. The day of the burial was gray and quiet, the kind of solemn sky that seemed to know what was happening below. Elena Rivera was laid to rest in a small cemetery outside Spokane, Washington, under a pine tree that reminded Marcus of the forests they'd both grown up exploring. There was no media, no cameras, just family, friends, a handful of DEA agents who had served with her, and Echo. The old canine sat in front of her casket, not moving, not barking. He wore his vest, black nylon with the faded yellow letters DEA stitched across it. Someone had attached a small American flag to his harness. When the service began, Echo didn't need commands. He rose on all fours, walked slowly to the edge of the casket and lay down beside it, placing one paw gently on the polished wood. A collective silence swept the group. Even those who didn't understand what Echo meant to Elena understood this. Marcus stood beside his sister's headstone, his eulogy short, direct. She didn't quit. Even when no one was coming, she stayed strong. She left a message. She fought to the very end. He paused, looked down at Echo. And someone never stopped searching. A few feet away, Chen stood with his hands folded tightly across his chest, sunglasses hiding the red around his eyes. Marcus looked up, voice rough. Sometimes justice takes 8 years. Sometimes it takes the nose of a dog who can't let go. The honor guard fired a salute. The flag was folded and handed to Marcus. Echo stayed until the last shovel of dirt was placed. 3 weeks later, Echo sat in the front passenger seat of Marcus's truck as they drove through a quiet neighborhood in northern Idaho. The air was crisp with the smell of firewood and the faint scent of wet earth. They passed a playground. Echo's ears perked. Several kids were playing, and among them, a girl, the same one who had knelt beside Echo after being rescued from the warehouse. She saw the truck, lit up, and waved. Marcus smiled. They pulled over, and the girl ran to the window, her foster mom trailing behind with a grateful nod. "Echo!" the girl called, reaching through the open window. "You came!" Echo let her scratch behind his ears. He licked her hand once. The girl looked up at Marcus. "Is he going back to work?" Marcus shook his head. "No, sweetheart. He's done all the work he ever needed to do." Her eyes sparkled. "Then can he be my dog someday?" Marcus looked at Echo. Echo looked back and wagged his tail. The adoption took another month, a few home visits, and a full behavioral exam. Echo passed every one of them. Marcus dropped him off on a Sunday morning, kneeling down beside him on the front porch. "You've done more than anyone could have asked," he whispered, ruffling Echo's fur. "You brought her home. You saved lives. And now, you get to just be a dog." Echo didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply licked Marcus's face once, then turned and walked inside the house where the girl waited, already holding a tennis ball and a leash too big for her hand. Marcus stayed in the truck for a long time after that, watching the front door, heart full and aching all at once. Back in Seattle, the full scope of the trafficking network came to light. Thompson's confession led to 6 more arrests, 3 indictments, and the recovery of 2 additional victims in other states. Elena's files, the ones she'd buried, became the foundation of a federal task force now known as Project Sentinel. At DEA headquarters, a small glass case was installed in the lobby. Inside, Elena's badge, the blood-stained cloth with her note, and a canine vest labeled Echo. Beneath it, the plaque read, "For those who never stopped fighting, and for the ones who never stopped looking." Marcus still visits the cemetery once a month. He brings black coffee, a tradition he and Elena shared from their academy days, and sits by her headstone with 2 cups, one for him, one for her. Sometimes he talks out loud. Sometimes he just listens, but he never goes alone, because now another canine rides shotgun with him, a 2-year-old Belgian Malinois named River. She's smart, relentless, and way too curious for her own good. And though she has a long way to go before she's ready for field work, she does one thing perfectly. She listens when Marcus tells stories about Echo. The last time he stood in front of that glass case at DEA headquarters, Marcus watched a group of academy recruits reading the plaque. One of them turned and asked, "Is that dog still around?" "No," Marcus said softly, "but everything he did still is." And that's the truth about heroes. They don't just fight evil, they outlast it. They leave a mark no one can erase. And sometimes the ones who never speak end up telling the loudest stories. Thank you for following Echo's journey, from a loyal partner to an American hero. Stories like his remind us that courage doesn't always come from those who wear badges. Sometimes it comes from those who walk on four legs in silence and never stop searching. Now, we'd love to hear from you. Do you believe dogs can sense things we can't? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals for more powerful, real-life stories like this one.